Arlington National Cemetery in Arlington, Virginia is an active military cemetery. There are many burials that take place each day, and one knows this is happening by the flags that are flown at half-mast. Over 285,000 members of the armed forces and others that are qualified are buried there. In the visitor center, there are many items of interest and places where information can be gained about the cemetery itself. In the center is a huge statue called the Price of Freedom sculpture. It dominates the room and is very beautifully done. Another point of interest is the Lost Heroes art quilt. It is 15 feet long and dominates one wall of the visitors center. This quilt was made by Julie Feingold and represents the fallen heroes of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. She has gone to great pains to have one representative from each of the states in our country, and they are pictured as a child on each square because they were someone's child and they did grow up to give their lives for our freedom. After researching each of the representatives' lives, she has it posted on the Lost Heroes Quilt website. Miss Feingold felt that if these fallen heroes weren't remembered in some particular way, they would soon be forgotten. The cemetery is divided into many sections. There are several monuments that are placed throughout the cemetery itself, and by looking at a map, they are easily found. Although there are many grave sites that are still available, the cemetery has begun building walls around certain sections so that cremated remains can be placed in them at a level that is easily seen by those there. In the early 1860s, basically the cemetery was used as a potter's field, especially for refugee slaves that were living in Freedmen's Village and who had died. But in 1864, with the Civil War, it was flooded with those who were wounded and dead, so the soldiers were buried in Arlington. There weren't lavish funerals, and the decorum was not present as it is today. The Arlington House was originally built by George Washington Parke Curtis, the grandson of Martha Washington and stepson of George Washington. but through several generations, it finally was purchased by the Lee family. The Lees lived in the house until the beginning of the Civil War, when General Lee moved to become commander of the Confederate forces. During the family's absence, many burials took place on their plantation. During their absence, the land and the house were claimed by the United States government, but eventually the Lees were compensated for the loss of their property, but at present it is now under the War Department and finally transferred to the National Park Service. President Kennedy's eternal flame is on the foothills of the Arlington House. This was land that was not included in the cemetery boundaries because of the steepness of the land. Beside the president being buried here, his wife Jacqueline and their two deceased children are also buried here. Robert Kennedy is buried a short distance away from his brother. He did not want any fancy type of grave when he was buried there. There is a simple white marker with a cross in the background. Probably the best known site in the cemetery is the tomb of the unknown soldier. A path around the amphitheater leads to the gravesite. The tomb is perched atop a hill adjacent to the amphitheater, and the tomb was completed in 1932, and since 1937, the 3rd United States Infantry Regiment took over the guarding duties, and they are guarded 24 hours a day throughout the year. Arlington National Cemetery is truly a place of honor for those who rest here and those who visit their memories.